I just turned 30, and I think there's something really funny about the way that we imagine getting older. When I was younger, I thought 30 was old, and I thought that it was going to mean that at that point I would have everything in my life together. I imagined being married by 25, having kids by 30, being in a career that I loved, and I thought I would have it all together. I thought I would figure out exactly who I was, what I was doing, where I was going, and what my life was supposed to look like. And now that I'm actually here, I realized the opposite. Saying goodbye to my 20s made me reflect and think about all the lessons that I've learned over my life. And the 20s are such a formative time. And it taught me that I actually know a lot less than I thought I did. And in your 20s, you've got all this bravado. You're trying to prove yourself in the world. And you're like, I'm smart. I know all the things and I'm going to act like it. And it's just not true at all. So there's starting out strong, starting out hot, coming out of college, you've got that bravado. You've got that, oh, I'm going to take the world by storm. I have this new degree. I'm going to change the world. And then you get into the real world and you realize it's not like you expected it to be. But in the process, I've learned so much about myself and about the world. And I've changed careers. I've built a business. I've made so many mistakes. I've had relationships in my life change. I've had people come and go. And I've had to learn a lot of lessons the hard way. And so while people who are older say the 20s are the best time, I found it the opposite. I had to learn a lot of hard lessons, but I'm really grateful that I learned these lessons earlier on so I don't have to deal with the heartache and heartbreak later on in life. I wanted to share with you the lessons that I've learned and just be grateful for the versions of myself that have come and go and the person that I'm evolving to be. And I think the biggest lesson of all of this is that I don't want to spend the next decade trying to become the person I think I'm supposed to be. I want to become the person who I actually am. Lesson number 1, I am enough as I am. In my 20s, I made a big move to a new state where I didn't really know a ton of people. I didn't have an established knowledge of the area. And even within that, I made some other moves. And in situations where you're the new person and you have the opportunity to start fresh and almost like define who you are in the social sense, the biggest lesson I learned was to not show up as the new people around you expect you to be, but show up as who you really are. Because if you show up as that cool new person that other people expect you to be, you're going to have to maintain that facade. And that can be a huge cost to your personal health, your boundaries, your mental health. And so when you're in a new situation, just know that you are enough as you are, and you don't have to prove yourself or your worth to other people because you are special for the unique things that make you yourself, and you don't have to match what other people's expectations are of you. Like, I would rather be rejected for who I truly am than accepted for someone I'm pretending to be, because the right people will accept me for who I am, and the wrong people will reject me for who I am. Lesson number 2, I have what it takes to build something great, but it has to be mine, and I have to do it for me and in a healthy way for me. So something that's really important to me is success is being a contributing member of society and having admirable and meaningful work in my life. And so while I build that, I've had to learn the tough lessons of work in a healthy way, at a healthy pace, and paving your own path in your career or whatever you're devoting your life to doesn't have to be taking the path that other people have taken. You can find success building your own path, playing your own game, and you don't have to play to the rules of other people. Lesson number 3, the career you dreamed about might not be the life that you're meant to live. So I came out of college expecting to be a career-long educator. So I had my teaching degree and my personal training certification. And my plan was to go back to school to be a therapist. And, my life's not over. Maybe I'll go back and do that. But as of right now, I don't have that desire. But I had this whole idea in my mind that I was going to do this and I was going to do that and I was going to go do this. And that just completely flipped because of life circumstances, because of world circumstances. And so the career path I thought I had kind of changed. And so all the expectations that I had also just went out the window. The big lesson here is that you shouldn't hold too tightly to what you think your life should look like, because you can't predict what's going to happen. In my 20s, COVID happened, and that completely changed the entire world. It changed everything about how we experience things. You shouldn't hold too tightly to what you think your life should look like, because world-changing circumstances just like that can happen, and things can flip. And when you're living in the wake of massive change and even the grief of losing what you thought would be your future, that is something to be grieved and it is sad. But if you held so tightly to that expectation that it shakes you and keeps you from moving forward for a very long time, that's where we get the problem. So you can have your dreams, you can have your aspirations, but you cannot bet everything on the fact that will happen, because it might not, you know? And because I didn't end up on that career path doesn't mean that I failed. It just means that that wasn't where my life was supposed to go.
And that kind of brings me into lesson number 4, which is you don't have to follow the scripts that are given to you. So for context, I was born in the Philippines. I moved to the US when I was almost 5. And as I started to grow up here, I started to learn what was expected of me socially, but I didn't know that I was being indoctrinated in such a way. So I went to public school starting in the 4th grade and learned that everything was so precise and it was heavily scripted. You sit at a desk all day, you do what you're told, you do endless workbook pages and homework, and then you follow that path, you go to college, you get a career, you get married, you have kids, and this specific timeline was driven into me from my youth. And I thought that that's how the world worked and that's what I was supposed to do. And even in my family of origin, where that wasn't the path being enforced, those weren't expectations that my parents placed on me. It was what I felt that society placed on me. And so the script of doing things in a certain order in a certain timeline doesn't work for everybody. And as I'm getting older, I'm seeing some of the people around me follow the script, and that's okay for them if that's what they want. But there are also people that I observe getting disappointed when their lives aren't following the script that they think it should be following. And there's a lot of grief and a lot of disappointment that maybe they're not married yet, or maybe they're having issues conceiving. They're not going into parenthood, which is a dream that they had. And it's okay to still have those dreams, but the timeline doesn't need to be so strict. And if your timeline is a little bit out of order, that's okay. If you decide to take a different path, that's okay. You don't have to follow the script that society places on you or that your family places on you, because that doesn't matter. Don't think about life as doing the things you're supposed to do in the timeline in order that you're supposed to do it. Part of life is just paving your own path and discovering who you are and what you actually want out of life. Okay, another thing I've learned when it comes to situations, whether it be relationships, workplace situations, is to pay attention to patterns. What is true consistently? Is a person's behavior consistent? Are our processes consistent? Because the consistency of behavior or lack of behavior, or even lack of consistency, can tell you a lot about the situation, a lot about the person you're in relationships with. And based on the observations of that pattern, you can determine, is this something that's for me? Is this something that's going to help me get what I want and get where I want to go? Or is this going to be a hindrance? And based on that, you can make some decisions on whether or not you want to move forward. Because you get to decide whether or not you like that pattern. If that pattern is serving you, awesome, move forward. If it's not, you need to have a difficult conversation, or you need to figure out a way to escape the situation. Number 6, you can still love someone and still have boundaries. There are people in your life, whether it's friends or family members, that you do deeply care about, that you want to keep in your life, but you have to keep them at a distance. Make some limits for yourself to protect yourself, protect your peace, protect your energy, and even protect the relationship. Love doesn't mean people have unlimited access to you, your time, your energy, your attention, your emotional space, and it's okay to set those boundaries, because that's loving towards them and it's also loving towards yourself. So don't be afraid to set those boundaries. Don't be afraid about how they'll react, because that's out of your control. And based on their reaction is also very telling about the type of person they are, which can also lead into more contemplation about whether or not this relationship is worth it for you to keep. But please set those boundaries. Please honor yourself. Lesson number 7. If there are people around you who are constantly into the drama, whether it's creating drama for themselves, bringing you into drama, or talking about somebody else's drama, run. If those people thrive on chaos, whether it's their own chaos or somebody else's chaos, making a spectacle of it, those are not good people to be around. That is chaotic energy. That is not helpful or beneficial to anybody. So you might want to distance yourself from those type of people. Because if they're not handling conflict well, and the only way of their handling conflict is gossiping about it, complaining about it, creating even more problems, those are not good people to be around. Lesson number 8, please go to therapy. Maybe this should have been number 1, but therapy gives you a mirror into yourself. It helps you to communicate what's going on the inside. It helps you realize where you are in relation to everything else and what you need to do about it. Sometimes you just need somebody else to tell you what you're doing so that you can see the bigger picture. Lesson number 9, watch out for pride. Pride is one of those things that we all think that we don't have, but I see it and I mentally call it out in other people. And the thing is, we don't like to be wrong. We don't like to not know information. But when we pretend like we are all of those things, that's essentially a mask that we're wearing. And the mask is pride. Pride comes before the fall, as it says in the scriptures. Watch out for pride, because if you're wrong or if you make a mistake, like, own up to it. It's not the end of the world. And if you pretend like everything's fine, number 1, people can see through that mask. Number 2, it can be dangerous to refuse to admit that you're wrong. And so I see this in people in different relationships. I also see it in the grand scheme of corporations and industries. If a company makes a product that essentially harms people, they send out this beautifully written PR statement that essentially absolves them of the responsibility. And that's them keeping their pride intact, but also trying to save face for the company, trying to not lose favor with investors and customers. And at an ethical basis, all of that's not right. Cover up culture, covering up things are not right. We need to apologize. We need to admit that we don't know things. We need to accept criticism with humility. We need to take accountability. We need to ask for help. Because pride, I've seen it get in the way of so many relationships, even just on the micro level. There are people with friendships or family members, I'm not apologizing until they apologize, or you don't know what they did to me. And, putting up that mask of pride can essentially just be covering up your own part in the conflict. And just pretending that you didn't participate isn't helping the situation. So it's really important to just bring that mask down and self-reflect and just think about, did I contribute to this? You can even have that conversation with the other party and be like, can you please tell me how I contributed to the problem? I'm really curious and open into learning how I can fix the problem. I mean, the truth is, we're not all that in a bag of chips. So just lay down your pride, because it'll help you maintain healthier relationships and a happier life. Lesson number 10, trust your intuition. That gut feeling you have is there for a reason. We have, I don't even remember what the number is, millions or billions of sensory neurons in our gut. It is called our enteric nervous system. So when we say the phrase gut feeling, you feel like this spinning in your stomach. That's actually your nervous system giving you a signal that something might be wrong. So pay attention to that. There are times where I have ignored my gut feelings and I ended up regretting it. You don't always need concrete evidence that something is up, but if you notice something that just makes you nervous, I want you to lean in and I want you to pay attention to that. Women are typically better at listening to their gut feelings, but like men, if you have those too, I really want you to pay attention to them. Number 11, I've learned that forgiveness is true freedom. I don't want to go and live my life with resentment towards other people, waking up in the morning being angry at someone for hurting me. I don't want to live like that. That just sounds like an awful way to live. Forgiveness doesn't excuse what the other people did, but it does help you remove the burden of yourself of the anger, because being angry takes energy, hatred takes energy, frustration takes energy, and you don't always need to bring that negativity in your life every single day. So forgive that person and forgive without hesitation, because it's not wrong to be mad, but when you live with the anger and the hatred and the bitterness for too long, it really starts to tear at you and affect your health. So I've learned to give forgiveness out generously, hand it out like candy, because it removes the burden from your shoulders as well as it helps the person that you're forgiving. Lesson number 12, just because something ends doesn't mean you're starting over. There are so many times in my life, not just in my 20s, where I've had to start a new job, start living in a new place. I mean, I've moved, I think, 31 times in my life. And each time one of those chapters would end, I would be excited for the new adventure. And I think that's how we should approach it, because things end, relationships end, jobs end, the plans you have can end, friendships end, versions of yourselves can end, seasons end. But every time that happens, there is a little bit of grief, but it's not over. There might be unmet expectations, there might be some loss, but in the process of moving into the new chapter, you have the experience, you have learned, you have the memories that you've accumulated, you have skills, you have things to be grateful for ending one chapter and moving into the next. Like, you're not starting from scratch, you're starting from that recent experience, plus all the experience that you've had in the past. Lesson number 13, stop trying to control everything. I'm preaching to the choir when I say this. I can be a control freak, but the truth is you cannot control other people. You can't control their reactions, their thoughts, their behaviors, their beliefs. You can't control the world circumstances. You can't control timing of situations. You can't control everything that happens to you. And so living in this constant state of anxiety of what if is something that I've struggled with. And this is a lesson that I am still learning going into my 30s, is that I need to stop trying to control everything, because not everything is under my control. And flexibility is your friend. You learn, you adjust, you keep moving. And then along with that, lesson number 14, it's okay to loosen up, because most situations are not life and death. I get so caught up in the nitty-gritty of trying to control and trying to have all the information so that I can make the best decisions. And most of the time, it's not life and death, and I can just chill, I can relax, and I hope you can too. Like, I type A, slightly perfectionistic, but sometimes the plan changes, and you have to be okay with going with the flow sometimes, because not everything is going to work out exactly how you plan it. Sometimes the best things in life happen when you are unexpectedly interrupted. And I have to say this to myself: if there's a mishap, I do say in my mind, it's okay, nobody died. Nobody died, everything's okay. So we've gone this far talking about the lessons that I've learned that aren't necessarily specifically tied to what I do as an integrative health practitioner, but we're going to get into those things now. And observing things as a trainer, as a health coach, as a nutrition coach, I've learned that nothing is worth sacrificing your health for. This is a huge theme in my life. I've made a lot of decisions, whether it's overworking myself, giving too much of myself to projects that I'm a part of, and coming out on the other end even worse health-wise, because I did give too much. I did overextend. And I have to remember, nothing is worth sacrificing your health for. You have to put boundaries on your work. You have to put almost rules of engagement of taking care of yourself. Like, give yourself a list of 3 to 5 things that are the bare minimum that you're going to do for yourself every single day, because you do deserve that. And then everything else is not life and death. Everything else is not that important. And that goes into the next lesson, which we're at number 16, is take steps to take care of yourself now, not later. In my field, in my career, I have learned by observing the people who waited until later, and it's not pretty. I have clients in their 60s and 70s who waited till they were later in life to start exercising, to start eating better, and the consequences are visible. There are diseases, there are postural issues, there are injuries, and it's motivating to me to continue to do what I do, but it's also motivating to me to remind my younger clients or people who are around me, like, you have to start making changes now. It's only going to get more difficult. You don't need to wait until you're sick. You don't need to wait until you're exhausted. You don't need to wait until a wake-up call. Let this be your wake-up call. It's not a punishment. It is an insurance policy of taking care of yourself now so that you have a better, happier, easier life in the future. Your future self is essentially asking your current self to start taking steps to take care of you. Lesson number 17, health is not about how you look. It is about how you feel and how you get to live in the quality of your life as you age. There currently is a lot of pressure from the media to look a certain way. There's the push of weight loss drugs right now. There's physical enhancements to the body that I see a lot of women being pulled into, and those things are not health because they just enhance how you look. But you need to take the steps to where you're feeling healthy from the inside out. You want to have the sustainable energy throughout your day as you get older. You want to have muscular strength, because the more muscle you have, the stronger you'll be, the more metabolically healthy you'll be, and the less likely it'll be that you'll break bones as you age. You want to have cardiovascular fitness. You want to go up several flights of stairs before you get out of breath. You want to have your independence as you age. So it's I mean, you could be a 75-year-old woman with big fat lips and a BBL, but if you can't walk up your stairs and get your own groceries, is the BBL worth it? Is the big lips and the Botox face worth it? I don't think so. I think it's more important to focus on these other things that allow you to preserve your mobility, your endurance, your strength, rather than on the surface enhancement. Focus your time and your energy and your resources on things that will have a long-term benefit for you instead of just getting filler that'll last a couple of months. A lesson I've learned, but I'm also still learning, is to slow down. Nobody's chasing you. I see people in this fast-paced rush, trying to cram everything into their days and into their calendars. And they're just on the go from start to finish, from the moment they wake up to the moment that they go to bed. Everything is planned out to the minute. And they're moving quickly. You're not being chased. Nobody is chasing you. It's not an emergency. You don't have to drive fast. You don't have to shove food down your throat. You don't have to rush to put on your clothes and to get ready in the morning. You don't have to immediately move on to the next thing. It's okay to take a breath. It's okay to move at a slower pace. Lesson number 19, use it or lose it. I'm mostly referring to any skills that you have, but also the use of your body, your muscles, things that you have done in your youth, like playing a sport or playing an instrument. I want you to keep that up as you get older because you lose those skills as you get older. As I'm entering my 30s, I'm remembering how much I loved dance and how much I loved music and performance and trying to figure out a way to fit that into my schedule. I also took 8 years of Spanish and I'm starting to lose my ear for it and I want to be able to practice that again. And it's true, you have to use it or you lose it, whether it be skills, passions that you have, or even just the function of your body. And you got to use your life while you have it. All right, we're down to our last 10 lessons, starting with number 20. This is a big lesson for me, and I hear it a lot, and I'm repeating it just so I ingrain it into my life, is to stop living for the next milestone. I've always been looking for the next accomplishment, the next projects to finish, the next shiny object. And I've heard older people reflect on their life, deathbed confessions and stuff like that. And people are like, I wish I stopped to smell the flowers more. And we've got this mentality of once I get there, once I get that new job, once I hit that salary tier, once I get the new car, you know, they'll start enjoying their lives, but enjoy it today. There's a lot to be grateful for in the little things of our daily lives. It's so wild to see how much of my life I've missed appreciating because I've been looking for the next thing. It's like, wow, a whole decade of my 20s have passed. And, you know, I'm still early on in my life. There are people that I talk to on a daily basis who will make comments of like, oh, I wish I was your age. I would do so many things differently. And I think one of the worst things that you could live with is regret. So I'm trying to glean from the older people that I am around. And that leads on to lesson 21. Time is more valuable than almost anything that you own. People in my age bracket and younger are so tied to these things. We're so tied to our phones. We're scrolling. We're wasting time on things that don't matter. Can you look at your phone on your screen time and just give yourself awareness of, oh my goodness, I unlocked my phone 300 times today? That's absurd. What do you mean? I spent 6 hours scrolling social media today. Does that matter when you have real people around you to give your attention to focus on other projects, to focus on yourself? You can always make more money. You can always make more friends, make more relationships, build more things, but you can't get the time back that you spend into those things. And while it's amazing to build things, there are things in our lives that don't need to be taking our attention and don't need to be taking our time. And like I said, I don't want to live with regrets. All right, number 22, contentment is going to be your best friend because as we age, as we accumulate more, whether it be physical, tangible things, contentment is a superpower. One of the things that I value in my life is that I'm not too into material possessions and I don't see material possessions as status symbols. I'm not out here shopping for name brand objects or designer clothes. That doesn't matter to me. And so contentment in the belongings that I have is something that I hope to take with me into my future as a huge lesson because I don't need something else or something new or something shiny to make what I have now more valuable because I have enough right now if you think about it. There are some times where I feel comparatively I'm not doing as well as my peers. And then I zoom back a little bit and look big picture, like I'm in the top 1% of the world. There are people, millions of people, maybe even billions, who don't have what I have. And that just gives me a reality check of, wow, I'm so grateful. I don't have to walk 8 miles a day for water, and I don't have to hunt for my food. I am super grateful for the opportunities and the blessings that I have. And that also leads on to lesson number 23. It's not about how much you have, it's what you do with what you have. Especially living in the Western world, there's always that push for more, 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 more. More money, more things, more cars, a bigger house, more accolades. Just get more. I mean, materialism is basically shoved down our throats. It's everywhere. There's billboards, there's advertisements. And one of the things I'm grateful for learning about the whole concept of marketing is the appeal to emotional things when they create these advertisements. I think it's unethical, some of these advertisements that are created or the ways that the algorithms are formed. They're just preying on people's vulnerabilities, people's weakness, so that we want more. But it's not about what we don't have, it's about what we do with what we currently possess. You don't have to have a lot to make a difference. You can be generous. You can buy someone behind you in line a coffee. You can volunteer your time. It doesn't even have to be tangible assets that you give, but your time is a resource that you can give someone and help them out. It can be money, it can be physical things, it can be your knowledge, it can be your attention, but you don't have to have much to make a difference. You don't have to change the world. You just have to change the part of the world that you influence, parts of the world that you can physically touch. And everything has a ripple effect. So if you make a difference in one person's life, that person will go tell other people about it, and that is how you change the world. Thinking about moving into my 30s as a perspective of how I see the world has greatly changed, especially in my 20s. As I enter the real world, I'm learning that nothing is what I thought it would be. And that was probably one of the hardest lessons to learn. I get out here and I am so naive and think I can make a difference. And I learn that there are world leaders and corporations and systems and structures in the world that don't always have the individual's interest at heart. The way that lawmaking is structured in the United States is that there are politicians and then there are lobbyists. And lobbyists have the job of manipulating politicians to create legislation that benefits them or the company that they work for, and not necessarily the people that it affects. And so you can have the most money, you can have the most influence, you can have these backroom deals that nobody knows about, and the community is shaped and structured by those decisions, but those decisions are not necessarily best for the community. That is the real world, and that's not very hopeful. However, I want to take advantage of the opportunities that I have to make a difference, to make things better. Even if I don't have control over some of those backroom deals, I can take responsibility and agency for myself and what I want for my future. And that includes asking questions. That includes doing my own research. That includes learning more, because just going with the crowd is not going to serve you. And it's okay to do some things that are unconventional. Leading into number 25 is there are a lot of rules in the world that are essentially social constructs. And as a person who always questioned why we have to do things a certain way, I really appreciate that. And I was the person who followed the rules, was a goody two shoes for most of my life. And then I'm growing up and realizing, oh, you know, those are not hard rules. That's not exactly how the world works. And unless I figure out an alternative way to go, I'm going to be stuck in situations and cycles that other people are stuck in. And I don't want that for myself. So don't be afraid to question social constructs. Like what I talked about at the beginning, who created the timeline? Who created the corporate ladder? Whose idea was that? Why do we all have to climb this ladder? Why do we all have to move at that pace? What if that's not what we want? And so a lot of the growth is unlearning things that aren't serving me, that don't make sense for me and what I want for my life. The next lesson I would put in is to don't put yourself in a box, don't put other people in a box, because we're all growing, we're all learning that some of the things and the constructs that we were told make up the world and society aren't necessarily the best for us. And so when we put people or ourselves in boxes, it enforces rigidity rather than flexibility and change. We want to change because we're complicated. People are complicated. But in the complications, we're growing and learning, and we can change. We can evolve. So we don't have to stick to our 5-year plan if we grow and learn things that make us want to change that 5-year plan. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay to become someone new because maybe the old version is not working. We're just down to the last few things that I've learned, but the next one is to be curious instead of being offended. If you come across an opinion or person who doesn't seem to agree with what you're talking about or thinking about, everybody's initial instinct is to tense up, and maybe this feeling rises up in your chest. That's where I feel it, a little bit of anger, a little bit of offense. And while sometimes that might be the appropriate response, a lot of the times it's not. We need to slow down and think about how we're responding and why we're responding that way. But most of all, being curious about why does the other person feel the way that they do? Why do they think the way that they do? Even if we think it's wrong, I think there's a lot to learn if we stay curious and want to learn about the other person's perspective, because we only approach the world from our point of view, and there are other people who approach the world from their point of view and their experiences and what they've learned. Even after the curiosity and having a conversation, you still might not agree with that person, but you do learn a lot in the process. I've observed in my 30 years of life that people are so quick to defend themselves, to defend their opinions, to think that they're right. It goes back to the pride thing. It goes back to the bravado and wanting to know it all. And sometimes we feel so secure in what we know and what we stand on, but there will be times where it's beneficial for you to learn about the other person's side, the other person's opinion, the other person's perspective, because that'll help you expand yours and maybe help you change your mind or see the world through a different lens. Always be open to learning, always be curious. The people out there who ask the most questions are some of my favorite people because they're curious, they want to learn more, and they believe that they don't know everything, and that's why they want to learn from other people, and I really appreciate that. Lesson 28. Going along with that one, humility will take you a lot farther than being right or pretending to be right. So just pretending like we know everything, I think it's better to be humble. The fact of the matter is, you don't know everything. I don't know everything, and I'm willing to accept that. And I'm willing to have conversations with people like where I say, I know that I don't know everything about the situation. Can you tell me more? Can you give me more information? Can you show me where I can learn more? Give me resources. Sometimes the goal when it comes to conflict isn't winning. Sometimes it's surrendering and offering service to the other person. Maybe it's being quiet and staying quiet. Maybe it's learning a lesson. Maybe it's taking time to grow. Being right is not always the same as being wise. Sometimes it's just best to shut your mouth. The next lesson I'll give is to give more than you take. This is a lesson that I learned in entrepreneurial space when it comes to making relationships with customers or colleagues and other businesses. It's best to show up and serve rather than show up and see what can I get out of the situation, because people don't want to be in any type of relationships with takers. People really appreciate givers, or even a good balance of give and take. You need to ask the question, what can I contribute to this? We're almost at the end. The next lesson is I learned not to carry what's not mine. And I'm currently struggling with a battle like this. We tend to carry other people's expectations on us. We tend to carry other people's problems, especially those of us who are very empathic and care about the people around us. And sometimes we're the people that others offload on. And while, yes, I do feel honored being that person that you feel so safe with that you want to talk to about your issues and problems, I can't always shoulder the burden of that. I don't always have the capacity, and I want you to reflect if this message applies to you too, but you cannot be the bearer of everyone's problems, expectations, emotions, and chaos. Those are not your burdens to carry. Those are their burdens to carry. You can help support them as they carry them, but it's not your job. It's not your problem to fix. That's a tough one, and I still need to practice it, but it is an important lesson. And then the last one of my favorite lessons, sometimes you just need to block them. There have been situational conflicts between people that I have overly analyzed, I've overly communicated in a healthy, positive way. Everything I learned in therapy comes up in these conversations. I know exactly what to say. Use I messages, not you messages. And you just cycle and cycle and cycle. And if the conflict doesn't come to a resolution, the person is responding in a toxic way, in an accusatory way, in a disrespectful way, and that's a pattern, you might just need to block them. I am no stranger to the block button. I love the block button. I'm grateful for the block button. But if that person is habitually crossing boundaries, not serving you, being disrespectful, block them. And don't feel bad about it. Block them and go to therapy. You can still love them from afar. You can still wish the best for them, but you can block them. I guess if I had to sum up everything that I've learned before this time of my life, it's that I spent a lot of my 20s trying to figure out how to build the right life. And I haven't gotten it right, but I have learned a lot in the mistakes that I've made. And I'm also learning that there isn't one right life or one right path. And I'm wondering if that just means that moving forward, I'll always be wondering if I'm doing the right thing or if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I haven't gotten there yet, but I appreciate all of the people around me with extra wisdom. And I'm happy to be curious and ask them about advice that they have about life or business or whatever. And I ask them questions and they ponder. They look up and they're thinking and they're pondering. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be a good answer. I really appreciate them. Reflecting back on my 20s, I don't want to spend the next decade trying to prove that I'm worth somebody's time, that I am successful, or trying to live up to somebody else's expectations, because I wasted so much time doing that and realizing that in the real world, that doesn't really matter. I want to be healthy and I want to enjoy life and I want to love people well. I want to be known as a person who loves people well. I want to build things that I'm proud of. I want to contribute to things that I'm proud of. I want to make my local community better. I want to learn so much more. I want to be generous. I want to laugh a lot. I want to be able to admit when I'm wrong. I want to be able to be quick to forgive and rebuild and reconcile relationships. I want to be present for my life instead of living vicariously through somebody else's highlight reel. And these are the things that I want for my future as I turn 30 and reflecting at, wow, so much has happened in the last 30 years, but also so much of the world has advanced and grown. There's a lot of technology. There's a lot of access to information that has never been seen before in all of the history of mankind. So that really shapes how I've grown, how I've learned. And it's wild to me. And it helps me stay grounded by talking to people who have been around a long time because they have seen some stuff and they have this sense of calm around them that everything's gonna be okay. They've been through wars and famines and divorces and job changes, having and raising kids and all these things. And they have all of this wisdom to pass along to the younger generation. And I'm grateful to learn from them. But to close up these reflections on my last 30 years, it doesn't matter if I have everything figured out because I don't think I will ever get there, but I don't want to stop exploring the opportunities out there to live a full life, to live a whole life and a meaningful one. So here's to 30. I have no idea what the next decade is going to look like. As of right now, I'm getting married this year, which is crazy to say. That is a whole other adventure on its own. I don't know what the next decade is going to look like, but I'm in this stage right now where I can dream about it, but I don't need to know exactly what's happening next. I'm really excited. I've wanted to hit this milestone for a while because people have told me once you hit 30, life gets a lot better, and I certainly hope they're right.